So welcome to another mod video. It's been so long, guys. Those of you who like these videos, thanks for being so patient. So this is the watch in question. Now, the reason why I'm modding this is because it's just a bit of fun. And I haven't done one for a while. And I can't even take it off at the moment. I'm so clumsy. I hope I'm not going to be clumsy with the rest of the build. Anyway, the model in question is a strong homage to a specific type of Rolex. A date just homage, if you will. And the model number of this is the Pagani Design, and this is the PD-1645, as you can see, with exhibition caseback, Seiko NH35 movement. These are a good base for modding because I got this watch for £55 on AliExpress. Now, everything you're going to see in this video will be in the description, all the bits where I got them from and how much and the tools I use even, so everything as helpful as possible as a guide. So if you fancy giving this a go, and you've not seen any of my other mod videos, this is the first one you've seen, you get an idea of, I've only done this a handful of times. I mean, every mod video I've done is almost every mod I've ever done. I probably did one or two mods before I even had the confidence to film it, and then the rest is history. You guys have been on the same journey with me pretty much, so I'm not an expert. Everything I'm showing you is me just from giving it a go. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So this will be a step-by-step process. So to make life easier, I'll just break it down as we go. So you get to see what this watch is like as you take it apart. So I'm going to try not to over edit this because I'm going to try and keep this raw and au naturel, but there will be lots of cuts because some things take longer than they should do on camera. So first thing I'm going to do is take the bracelet off, and this is like that. So it's got like a little V shape, and that's easy to tuck in here, and you can just release the spring bar. You do it each side, and then it comes out. You can retain and keep these spring bars. So let's take this off, because always good to have a strap or bracelet out the way when you're doing any kind of mod where you're taking all the back off and everything like that. It just makes life a lot easier. So, and forgive any wobbling throughout this video. I've tried to make this as stable as possible. I've got the wobbliest desk in the world, but needs must and all that. So let's keep this bracelet aside over here. Always be neat and tidy when you're doing any mods. Be organised. At the moment, off camera over here, I've got everything ready, so you'll know when you're going to do a mod, and you know what tools you need to do it. Have everything to hand ready, and it's very neat and easy to see it, because you don't want to be clumsily fumbling around like I can do when I rush these things, looking for the right tool. So always be prepared. So we're now in the stage where I need to take the case back of this watch off. So a good tool to do that with is one of these. And these are all adjustable in different ways. Roller adjuster at the back for the width. You can change these to different sizes, so it depends on the size of these little notches around the screw case back on this particular watch. So before I do it, you just sort of line it up to get the sizing right. So it's a bit too big at the moment, so I give it an adjust until you just feel it gripping, and then you can twist this one until you feel it gripping. Now, save me risks if I'm doing this and it's too tight and I turn it and slip and scratch the watch. Good thing to do is to place a piece of plastic here. It doesn't impede you doing this part of the job, but if you do slip, you're not as likely to scratch the watch. So you've got it held in place. You can just hold it with your hands, give it a good twist, you can feel it go, and that was it. We're unscrewed now, so you can finish it off by hand like that. You can tell when it's done because it's nice and loose. Place that aside face down so we don't get any dust on the underneath of it. So I've placed it over there. So now I'm going to get my other little bit here, which is what I like to rest my watches on. Got this off eBay for about £5. Again, everything you need to know will be in the description, guys. So if you get lost along the way or want to have a recap, it's all in the description. So now we've got the back exposed. A good thing to do is to use some little tweezers. I got these carbon fiber ones, but you can get these cheaper metal ones. They're fine. Sometimes I find the metal ones are really good for detailed work because they just feel more precise. But I'm going to remove this little gasket. That's what gives this screw case back a watertight seal. So carefully place that with off screen here, the screw case back. Now we've got the next part we need to do is actually take the crown out, which is here. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. This is what you're going to use to help you get this crown out of the watch. Now, what you need to do, I'm going to show you up close before I drop this pin. See, my desk is so unstable, everything wants to roll off. Not helpful. Anyway, I'll hold it up as close to get some focus. And I want to show you with my tweezers, just here, you see that little, it looks like a lever in there with a little dimple. I'll see if I can get as close as possible. You see that just there? Yeah, just there. That's what you want to press at the same time as pulling the crown out. So I've already unscrewed the crown, but if I pulled this crown out anymore, what will happen? You'll see that dimpled part which you would press has disappeared. That's why you need to, you'll see when I push it back in, see it's popped back out. That's why you need to have it unscrewed if it's a screw down crown, and you need to see that dimple, and that is on this movement. Every movement's different, but we're me demonstrating this watch today. So this is fiddly, but you'll get the hang of it. So you rest the piece in your hand like this, and you then with the other hand carefully place the tip of the pin on that dimple and then squeeze it with your thumb. So I'm being gentle, and then all I have to do is literally pull that, and that's it, it's released. So very carefully place this aside. It's very easy to bend these, and then that can fudge your movement up, and carefully place that aside. So now we've got that out. All I need to do is carefully remove this movement holder, the plastic one, out. Now the way we do that is you've got to do sort of two things at the same time again. It's a bit tricky. What we have to do is, if I just tried to lever this movement holder out now, it would pull the movement out with it. I want them to come out separately. So what you need to do is just get another one of your mini screwdrivers. That's going to be leverage that you're going to put in one of these slots. You see here, all the way around here. So that can fit through, and then as you can see, it's pulled the whole thing out. I don't want it to do that. So all I have to do is carefully rest the tweezers, preferably the carbon fiber ones, or just something that's not going to be scratchy, you know, it's not going to scratch it. And then you put it in these leverage points, and as you can see, that really easily came out. And that's separate, nice and easy. So just off camera, I'll show you there. I've got everything neatly placed, which makes life easier for you in the future when you put it all back together. So now this is ready to flop out. So what we need to do is I'll put the cushion on there like that, turn it over, lift that out, give it a jiggle if it's a bit stuck, and that's it, it's out. Now I'm going to put this, for its future parts of the mod, into this new toy I got. It was 15 quid. I got this from the Fleda official store actually, because it's the best value one I found. It's been designed to accommodate specifically NH35 and a few other movements. It says on their website, but I knew it would accommodate the movement in this watch. And it's a neat and easy way of holding your movement in place while you do the other bits that are relevant to this project. So we rest that there. That slot there is for where the crown's going to go in. So I'll place it in there. And I'm not pushing it with my finger to get it to seat in there, because I'll have to do that with my finger cut on. So it's just gently rested in there for now, and I'll put that aside because there's another thing I need to get done, and that is take off this Cyclops. Now the way you take a Cyclops off, most of the time, on 99% of the watches I've done it with, which has still admittedly only been a handful so far, is they do come off quite easily with no damage, and use a jet fuel lighter. I got this for a few quid off of Amazon, and it has to be a jet one because you don't want a big flame going over things, because it can melt the seal. Because holding often in crystals in place, there is a seal. You can just about see it actually through here. It's a clear one. See, it's like a milky colour. That is the seal that holds the crystal in place. I'm pretty sure it's in there. And they can melt if you hold the heat directly over that. That's why you need a very specific localized flame. And that's what we're going to have on this. So I'm just going to show you that. You have to heat it, keep taking it away, heat it, take it away. So you're not just doing a constant heat, because you can overdo it. So let's do it. Hot. So be careful when you do this, because the watch and the crystal and the glass, everything gets hot. And you'll know when this is freed because it'll make a little tick sound. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. It'll make a tick and it'll pop, and you'll see it. It looks slightly different. And then using one of your other tools, a screwdriver or something, you can just flick it out of the way. Let it all cool down. But we'll do that after I've got this off. So let's heat it up. See, it made a little tick sound and popped, and I straight away took it off because I don't need any more heat, because that part of the removal of the Cyclops is done. And next job is to very carefully just see the watch is, it's warm, it's good. I haven't, some watches you have to do it for ages and the watch is almost glowing. No, I'm joking, it's not glowing. That's silly, but no, look. That's it. It's off. And then when this is cooled down, because this has still got residue of glue on it, that's what's making that scratchy finish. That's just the glue, because this is sapphire. You can't scratch it easily with a screwdriver. So what you do is you let this cool down, then that actually will buff off. I often just use Polywatch to buff. Here I am mid buffing. As you can see, it takes a bit of buffing to get it off, but as you see, the residue of that UV activated adhesive, which is remaining, is going. So it takes a bit of elbow grease, and I just use Polywatch because it seems to do the job, and just keep persevering and you'll get it off. So as you can see, with a bit of elbow grease and perseverance, there's a tiny bit left there, I can see in the light, but yeah, it comes up beautifully. So now we're at a very fiddly and very skill orientated part of the job, and this is the bit which requires the most practice, and people are going to make mistakes here. I've done it enough times. I've done it enough times even when I think I know what I'm doing. So a good thing to start with before you start touching anything that's all delicate and movement and hand orientated, etc., is to put these on. These are called finger cots, and I previously used to nickname them finger johnnies. And for anyone who knows the English language will know what a johnny is. So yes, it's pretty gross, but that's just me. I have a gross sense of humour. Anyway, it's all good fun. Now what I'm doing is putting these on because, like I said earlier, oil's in your skin. You don't really want to be getting that on anything movement or inside the watch related, because it's not meant to have it. It's called contamination for a reason. So just putting these on. Now what I like to do now is, this is my first time using this movement holder, so I'm quite excited because it's always been something that's been fiddly before for me. So I'm just going to carefully push that in so it's seated in there. This is held in here safely. Let's just stop it moving around and being awkward to work with. I need to put the crown back in because we need to do some setting of the hands. So I know I shouldn't be putting my fingers near the hands, but I know where they are. So I'm just, as you push it in, you need to give it a little twizzle as you do it, so you're not forcing it. See, there it went in very easily. You should never force it in because that can cause damage. So I've felt it go in. I'm just going to gently rest my finger there to stop it moving around too much, and just to make sure it's seated in. So when you pull it out, see, it didn't carry on coming out, so you know it's seated in there. So it's a hacking movement, which means I pull the crown and stem all the way out, everything stops, which is much easier for this kind of part of the project, because you don't have the hands still wanting to do their thing whilst you're trying to basically take them on and off. You can do it, obviously I've done it with Vostocks where they're not hacking movements, and it's still fine. It's just a little bit easier for precise setting of the hands when you take them all off and put the new ones back on. So the first thing we do is set the hands all to 12 o'clock. So the second hand's nearest, damn it, to the 12 o'clock. I'm happy with that. So they're all pretty much in line with 12. So now I need to take these hands off. Now, how do you do that? That's the important thing. Well, first thing we need to do, the way I do it is I put one of these Bourgeon protectors. I slide them underneath. And that's to protect the dial from being scratched up if you want to reuse this, because that is something you want to do sometimes with modding, is to keep things for future projects. So this is under there. That protects the dial for when I get these levers I've got here just off camera. There's other ways you can do it. People have said in the comments that you should use these, they're better that way. It's actually down to preference. These exist for a reason, because some people get on with these better. I've had these and done all my mods with them, and I've done okay with them. So it's down to preference. I recommend these just because I've had no troubles with doing it. So all you do is you've got to envisage you're putting these under your hands. So you've got to think about the angle you're going underneath and have consistent leverage, because if you go off that way too much or that way, it's going to buckle and twist them off at a funny angle. So you want consistent leverage to pluck them out evenly and lower your risk of damage. So let's get stuck in. So I gently have tucked these under the very bottom hand, which is the hour hand, and I lever like that, and they should pop off together, which they are very neatly, as you can see. very nicely done. And then I need to take this dial off. Now before I take this off, I measured this dial, so when I ordered the replacement effectively to go on here, I knew that the new dial I was getting would fit this case, this movement, etc. So what I did was I had actually cheated. I've actually had this watch apart before. It's not really cheating, it's just what you do to be prepared. So I've got one of these measurement tools, and I use this to measure the dial that is a standard on this watch. So the way you take this dial off is you get a little tiny screwdriver like we've used before, like this one for example, 1mm, I think. I haven't measured it, but what you do is just under here, say just above where the crown goes in. Let's hold it closer so you can see. See, there's a little slot there. That's an excellent leverage point, because this dial is just held in place with feet. So you gently twizzle and twist, and you feel it gently popping away, and that's pretty much it. You can probably finish it with your fingers like that. So let's take this new dial out of its packaging and see how it's going to fit back onto this movement. Where the feet are, this is a dial not meant for this movement, so that was what I was going to do. This is going to be attached with dial dots, so I don't want any of these feet on this new dial. So the way I remove them is as follows. I'll put this aside so I don't accidentally drop any bits on it, and take the new dial, and I carefully will remove each foot. So I use these little pliers. I grip as close to the movement as possible holding it, and I literally, so not the movement, the dial, and I twist like that, and they snap off. So put these little bits that come off aside. Now, as you can see, I've gone for chocolate brown. Chocolate is one of my favourite things in the entire world, and I thought, what would be nice to have I've never had a brown dialed watch before with rose gold. I thought, why not give it a go now? This is the perfect time. So, fairly sterile dial, but I love the big indices on here. So this is what I went for, and it's the same size as that dial that came off this watch. So now I'll show you what a dial dot is and why it's amazing, and how we use that to attach it to the movement. These are dial dots, tiny little double-sided stickers which are specifically for attaching dials to movements or watches. Now this, I don't want to stick it to the movement. The best place I found when I've done this before is on this watch, is I will attach it to a few points around the movement holder, the grey part, which is actually attached to the movement. This is kind of a built-in movement holder that Seiko have. So I'm going to attach a few of these. I use my little tweezers. I very carefully will place them on, and then I'll show you. I'll do one and then I'll do the rest just so you get an idea. As you can see, I've already pre-stuck on the 4. 4 is pretty good, consistent amount to hold on. Once you put it on, you'll see there's the backing paper, or the top half will just slide off. As you can see, you just see the residue of it. Now I'll fold the excess over the movement side rather than it overlapping the movement parts that will move, such as in this case the date wheel. So anything overlapping or sticking or getting stuck into anything that moves. So that's why I've put them like that. So as you can see, I've very carefully plucked this out of the movement holder. I've flapped over the excess of these dial dots over the edge of the movement holder, the grey part. Oh, sorry, bashed the camera. I'm going to carefully place this back in the movement holder, and then we can put the dial on, and that's where I have to put my finger cots back on. So I am ready, finger cots are on, to carefully place this onto here. So I know that the 3 lines up with the crown, and I know that obviously the pinion of the movement's got to go through the middle of here. So all I've got to do is just carefully line it up, and if it's slightly out, I can tweak it ever so slightly by hand, because the dial dots don't go off like immediately. So without further ado, let's place this on. So I'm going to carefully sight it in over the top, rest it in place, and I can just move it gently with my fingers till it's centralized, and I'm just carefully looking to make sure that that little notch that you can see at the 3 o'clock point lines up with exactly with the stem. And if I look in the middle here where the pinion goes through, to make sure it's centered. So I need to tweak that a bit, as it's slightly too far to the right. And that's it. So it will all sort of centralize itself when I put this all back in the watch. Another thing I can do right now is I can gently just give it little pushes to make sure, just tapping it, obviously no residue or contamination while I do this, to make sure it's seating against the dial dots which I stuck on there. That looks centralized and it lines up with the 3. So now we're ready to put the hands back on. Here are the hands. A good thing to use whilst you're handling hands. Handling hands, nice way to use the word hands a lot, handlings. Anyway, Rodico Bergeon, Rodico. Bergeon is the brand, and Rodico is the product. It is watchmaker's putty or blue tack, or it's basically great for so many jobs. Cleaning, picking things up, doesn't leave residue. It's fantastic for watch modding, so get some. It's not cheap, but lasts for ages. I mean, you get a block of it, it's about 3 or 4 inches long, and it lasts for ages. It's good to keep swapping it out. So it's, as you see, it's quite tacky, and it's a pain to use when you're wearing finger Cots, finger Johnnies, but it's actually a godsend when it comes to putting hands on. So let's get these hands out of the packaging. If I can put this Rodico down, there we are. There they are. And I'll pick each one up individually with the Rodico. And it is a tricky thing to do, so I've got to carefully like flip it over like that, for example. Another thing you can do to handle them is use your carbon fibre tweezers, because these don't scratch. And very carefully I can then pick it up like that and place it at the 12 o'clock position. I know I made that look easy, because it was. No, I'm joking. It is not easy. So you've got to be so careful. This is the bit where you've got to be very, very gentle and very careful with your precise tweaking. So I'm gently tweaking this over with the carbon tweezers to line up, and it's almost perfect. But to get it seated properly, we need to use a hand presser. And I use this by hand, literally. It's different sized bits you can get for the head to fit over, so it doesn't squash or go in the middle pinion. And then what you do is you very carefully and squarely push down until you can just see it's seating nicely. That felt like it's seated on there nicely. Let's have a look and see if it has. Looks good to me. Good thing to just check it for square. And then check it moves okay when you turn that. So let's go way around to 6 o'clock. Make sure it hasn't snagged anything on the way around. So bang on 6 o'clock. Now we can put on the minute hand. Same in reverse as before. Just carefully pick it up with Rodico. Hold it in place with the tweezers. Gently lay it on top. Fine tune it with your tweezers. So you know it just feels like it's seating or resting in the right position. Like that. And then again with a hand presser, I use now a slightly smaller one with a slightly smaller head on it to seat that in place. So that's all good. And now I'm going to test it for going forward, and nothing snags. So it's quite close to the hour hand as it goes around. It's not touching, but it's a bit too close for me, so you can either tweak it or just double check it's seated by gently placing the pusher on and give it a little rock. You'll see the hand moves as you do it. You can almost see it tilting back and forth, and that is it sort of gets seating better into where it's meant to go. So now I can see, turn it round. So we've got good clearance now, as you can see. Now the final hand is very tricky, and that is this second hand. This just involves being very careful. So again, I'm going to pick up. Took about 4 or 5 attempts. It's not easy to line that tiny little part of the second hand to slot in over that tiny little thin pin in the middle. You know when it works, because hey presto, it starts ticking. Now we need to just check everything for alignment, doesn't snag on anything. You see all the hands clear each other as you go round. So you go around to 9 o'clock, everything lines up, very good. So now what we're going to do is take this crown out by doing the same in reverse as we did before in the very first place, and put the watch back together. So let's start doing that. But before we do that, a good thing to do as you go along is use a puffer to puff any dirt away, any fluff or residue or dust, and use your Rodico to very carefully get a very thin point on it, and take my finger cuts off. Very gently clean any tiny bits of residue that may be on the hands. I'm being very careful here. I'm holding this very edge of the movement holder. Use your pin again. A trick to get this out is fiddly. Is you put the pin as before where it needs to go, on that little nipple there, and then you have to carefully do that. That's how fiddly it is, but that's the technique to get this out. So it's on its cushion. It's ready to be recased. Here's the case, all prepared. As I say, polish the crystal up. And then what you do is you puff away at everything. Make sure any excess dust or fluff is out of the watch and off of there. You end up blowing all your bits everywhere, but be careful. Yeah, puff and puff away. Puff to your heart's content. And if there's anything really stubborn, use your Rodico to pick it up. Place that over the top. As you can see, it seats in there perfectly. And then we're going to flip it over. Like that. Now it's ready to have the movement holder put back in. But before I do that, I like to sort of line it up, so I know where the crown's got to go in. So I don't use the crown to fully engage it. It's just, you know, the crown's got to go in there. So it's just loose fit, just to help align it in there a bit better. And then you place that over the top. And then gently click it in and use your tweezers to help you, or a flathead screwdriver, or any other tool that's not going to be too tricky to use, just to seat it in. Holds the movement in place. And then when you feel comfortable that that's in, you can give it a tweak and a twizzle and you feel the movement, so the crown and the stem go back in. So yep, that's all good now, that's seated in. And what we do is, I'm going to use this. This is my anchor greasing pad. And I like to re-grease if I've taken a seal out. This is the seal that was in the watch. And you put it in there like that. Give it a few times. And that is now re-lubricated. And I'll use a different pair of tweezers to put it back in place, because I don't want to do any cross-contamination. So this is my specific tweezers I've got for this job. So I then carefully place that where it lives. The case back, and then carefully reposition it before. There's a little slot that this fits into, so you've got to make sure it's seated in there. Otherwise, when you try and put the case back on, it can distort, twist, or snag this gasket if it's not seated in properly. So I'm just carefully tweaking it into position, and then I can put the case back on. Here's the case back. Again, I haven't touched the inside, but just to be sure, I'm going to puff in there very gently, put that straight on over the top. Get it started off by hand, sort of use 2 fingers and just get it started. So you might have to back it off a little bit just to get it threading to start. And when you start to feel it thread quite easily, or it should thread quite easily, and then you can start using your case back tool to tighten it back up again. Now for the final reveal, I will do a nice finale outdoor shot scene. So do enjoy. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, just pop it in the comments. And I'm so happy to help. But thanks so much for watching, guys. It's been a pleasure. See ye in the next one. Bye for now.